Good morning, Anna.
Good morning.
It's the final day.
I know. I'm equally excited, but I'm also slightly sad.
I know, and I think a couple of people have already asked whether they can get some more people into the chats today, and I'm wondering whether we might need to continue this a bit longer than this week. So we might have to revisit this with the Climate Expo team to see whether we have some more events on the road to COP, or the pathway to COP, as Dan liked to call it.
Yes, exactly. Although that would be good to extend it, because lots of people have been saying in sessions there's just not enough time. We need more time to talk and discuss things.
Yes. Speaking of not having enough time, we have two wonderful guests joining us today, one of whom is about to give a talk in about 15 minutes. So we're going to welcome them in. Hello, Jessica and Chamu.
Hello,
Jessica. Hello.
It's great to have you both here, and I know you've each contributed to Expo already over the week, so it'd be wonderful to hear a bit about your experiences. Chamu, when was your session? Was it Tuesday?
Monday, actually, Monday afternoon, after lunch.
Seems like a long time ago. How did it go? What were you talking about?
Yeah, it is a long time ago. And, I had to sort of look at it again to see where exactly I was at that point. Although I have been like a, sporadic visitor over the last few years, because few days, because of what's been happening in India as well with the COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Just harking back to Monday, it really connects to what's happening now in India as well, because it's all about governance. I think weak governance is such a big issue, and climate change and the rule of law are very important topics. And that's sort of what I spoke about as well on Monday. It's something very close to my heart. I approach it all the time from a top-down model, but I have a feeling that we really need to have bottom-up approaches as well. So last week I just finished a paper on the role of Supreme Court and climate action. But then the paper I presented was all about how BAME artists could get involved in sustainable fashion through bringing about their own charter of sustainability and looking at how their own practices in, for example, theater, costuming, makeup, what impact does that have? What's the footprint of that? And how they could go about putting their own commitments to climate action. So putting that all in a sort of a soft law framework, as we call it in law.
Really fascinating.
That's great. The thing that we've always been talking about this week actually has been the integration of art and creativity in general in that idea generation, and also like innovation of, within communities and within transforming things like policies and looking at things in a completely different way. So that's a really important point to make, getting different communities of people together in order to sort of facilitate, these new ideas and to keep going forwards, but together. More importantly, which is really exciting. So that sounds great what you've been doing. So Jessica, we'd ask you the same thing, please. You've obviously done your session earlier. Please tell us about how that went and what your highlights have been so far.
Thanks Anna. My session was on Wednesday. On Wednesday, and we talked about mitigation solutions. It was a session by the COP26 fellows, and we talked about how our different works contributed towards mitigation solutions. And my presentation, my main argument within that session was that we needed to think about adaptation, but also trying to find an equitable balance between adaptation and mitigation. And I asked researchers to kind of move forward and start presenting their work on adaptation, on the effectiveness of different options for adaptation, but also on evidence on how to balance between adaptation and mitigation, and to take that to the COP and to use different platforms where we could get more inclusive decision making, more inclusive engagement that would contribute to COP activities.
That's really fascinating, because that's really come up quite a lot, inclusivity and giving people a voice. And it's fantastic to have these COP26 fellowships. Do you have a sort of program that you're following through? Was it really for you to just devise your own program of work ahead of COP26?
So each of the fellows have their own research topics, and we are using that as guidance. And so for my work, I am basically looking at local delivery of finance for adaptation, and specifically focusing on the Green Climate Fund. And so I design how I want the research to go and who I want the research to reach. And so it's not really, it's not a very rigid program. We get to decide where we want the research to go, but then a lot of that is informed by policy and knowledge needs, where we think the research needs to have the greatest impact.
Yes, and that's it. We're talking about priorities all of this week because COP26 is only, well, less than 6 months to go. And we are desperate to know what everyone's priorities are at the moment. So we'd like to know, ladies, starting with Chamu, please, what are your priorities, your top priority, if anything, for COP? What do you hope to see and hear?
I think at COP, I'd really like to look at or hear a lot more about building resilient societies and interlinked societies. So, ideas for harnessing the power of communities across nations, across communities, across regions, across languages, across barriers. So I think resilience is really the key term. And what I'm thinking of is it's very difficult to identify specific risks that will come to us in the future. Either as individuals, groups, or even countries. So we really need to be prepared to focus more on building resilience all around so that we would be able to respond to the unexpected in ways that are robust. So I think that's sort of my mantra. Cascading risks are going to affect, unexpectedly. So we need to build real resilience.
And Jessica, I know that your session next at 10:45 is on access to finance. And I imagine that resilience and justice are quite closely related. How do you see that picture?
So for me, resilience and justice and finance are very much interlinked. We cannot really have progress on climate action, especially in the global south, if there's not enough resources to finance that. And at COP26, we'll have discussions about what is the role of finance in enabling the NDCs, but also the adaptation plans that countries are creating. But also we'll revisit the 100 billion goal that countries committed to, the USD 100 billion per year by 2020. And this is where research on climate finance really needs to come in. And so I think conversations about resilience and adaptation need to be accompanied by how much finance is there, but also where's the finance going and what is this finance doing? And so we're thinking about what are the outcomes, what are we already getting from the finance that we have, and what extra can we get from the finance that we need to get so as to address the adaptation finance gap. And emphasis here is on local actors. We need finance to get to the local actors, and that's what this fellowship is about, to quantify and to understand how finance should get to the local actors in the global south.
Jessica, do you feel that over the last 10 years, do you feel that we've come leaps and bounds in this area? Do you feel that there's been a lot of progress, or do you feel that now is really the time where we're going to see a lot more progress? We've got to a certain point, or, how do you feel, or your perspective of that?
I think there's a bit of progress, not as much as we need. It is very slow. It does not equate to the urgency of climate change, the urgency of risks that are faced by some communities or by some places in the global south. But then I also think that COP26 is also a very important platform because the climate finance goal was set by 2020 and we've reached 2020 and we know how well or how poorly some people or some countries or some institutions have performed. And so we'll go there and take, stock take, but also we're thinking about what role can our climate finance mechanisms play in ensuring that we're scaling up finance, but also making sure that we're having more effective climate finance flows. And so, we've come a long way, but I still think it's not enough. And this is where such research comes in. We are highlighting where the gaps are and what needs to be done.
That's really interesting. I mean, over the week, so much has been discussed about the global picture and notions of solidarity. And I wonder, Chamu, I know that your work is very closely connected to international law. Do you think the legal context is right for progress, or is there still a lot more to be done?
I think there's a lot more to be done. In fact, maybe we're even sliding back behind, especially when it comes to sustainable development goals. And I work a lot in the area of development finance, which is a topic that's been going on for the last 50 years through UNCTAD, etc. So I think we really need to push forward very quickly and very urgently. There are mechanisms, so therefore, it's a very important point that Jessica's raised, and it needs to all tie up together. SDGs, 2050, Paris Agreement, everything together.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So Jessica, what is your sort of next step for your research? Where do you go next with this?
My next step is to engage more with GCS finance allocations, but also to see whether we can use research coming out from this fellowship to open up greater conversations about accountability and transparency within finance allocations, and how we can have increased transparency and accountability. And I think that will contribute to scaling up of finance. It will inform debates on how finance can be scaled up at COP26.
Thank you. We know you've got to jump off, so thanks so much for being here. Have a good session.
Thanks, Andy and Anna. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye for now.
So, Chamu, before you drop off, it's great to have you with us, and I just wanted to, because we met many years ago, and I'm just always so fascinated by how you bring together art and of course the legal aspects of things as well. So, just a moment to tell us a little bit about how dance fits into your life and your work.
Yeah, I mean, it's always there. Expression in the form of text as well as non-text is something I find really important for behavior, whether it's legal behavior, regulation. I mean, going into the future, that's sort of what I want to, take forward, which is develop new methodologies, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work to address climate change as well as, climate action.
Yes, and again, we're talking about, having what would be two separate disciplines collide, actually being able to inform the other and also progress the other, being really, it has been in almost every session, it's been highlighted, whether you're a student or whether you're a scientist, or where we were talking about placing research and how to place researchers now in a different perspective. So, there really is something to be said about art and the need for that integration between climate science. Sorry, it's just so much going on this morning. So, having that integration and also between artists is really important.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that concept of expression that you mentioned, Chamu, is sort of central to all of this, which is a lovely way to end this session, but with our promo for the Act Now film campaign, which is launched this week as well, inviting young people from ages 18 to 30 to make a film about their concerns, to become part of a bigger film that'll be shown at COP26. So thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you again, Chamu, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care.
Yeah, thank you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
In November 2021, the UK will host the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties in Glasgow, also known as COP26. The COP26 summit will bring together international government negotiators, decision makers, and policy makers to discuss how they should accelerate action towards stopping climate change. From small island states to countries with rapidly growing urban areas, representatives from 197 countries are expected to join the summit. We, the young people living across the planet, have the opportunity to tell these decision makers why stopping climate change is important to us, the future generations, and everyone's voice matters.
So we're making a film, all of us. Please tell us what matters most and we'll bring your perspective into the frame. Tell us what is important to you and how leaders can change so that they can lead the change we want to see in our world. If you're 18 to 30 years old, submit your video on Twitter, Instagram, or Weibo of up to 2 minutes in high definition using the hashtag ActNowFilm.
Your video submission should include the following points: your first name and country, why is climate change important to you, what do you think is the most important change that needs to be addressed in climate change, are you a part of any group or organization, if so, where is it and what does it do, what pledge will you take to address climate change, and what would you most like to say to the global decision makers at COP. For more details, please follow on Instagram, Twitter, or Weibo, where you will find everything you need.
Here's your chance to show the negotiators what action you are already taking and what action you'd like them to take.